name is Sheridan Ruth, and I am here to welcome you home. This is the Exposed Podcast. Where we reveal the body-based ways to ease anxiety, heal trauma, and create an empowered connection with love and money using nervous system regulation and a healthy dose of self-compassion. Welcome to today's episode. Today we are speaking about faith-related trauma with Bisi. Bisi is a Florida mental health counselor who really specializes in faith-related trauma, racial trauma, and she is a woman of color, so she brings a deep understanding to themes of race. She's not afraid to have difficult conversations. Bisi's heart is really here to help people heal and to bring healing to areas that are often overlooked or neglected. It is her goal that more people will come to know themselves and their stories more intimately, find healing, and move through life with a greater sense of freedom. Bisi and I talk about things such as, like, how do you know if you have faith-related trauma? What is faith-related trauma? Using the body to recover. We talk about belonging, loneliness, community. And we also talk about the fear of kind of, I'm a bad person and something bad is going to happen. If you are experiencing any of these things and would like support in healing your past experiences, your trauma, or any stress and anxiety that you're experiencing, so that you can find ease in life, so that you can receive love and give love, and so that you can create the life of your dreams, I would like to invite you to come onto www.sheridanruth.com/expansion, where you can book a free 30-minute call. On this call, you're going to receive free coaching and support around your unique situation. And at the end, we will talk about whether or not working through my ease framework is the absolute best fit for you right now. Go ahead and use the link below to book your call, and I will see you on Zoom. In the meantime, enjoy this wonderful, wonderful episode. Bisi, I'm so excited to be speaking to you. When you and I first connected, I was really drawn to your work regarding faith-related trauma because I've been on, like, it's kind of like silently behind the scenes. Everyone's going to be listening to this and be like, Sheridan, what? This has been happening? But like silently behind the scenes, I've been on this really big journal of like reconciling with my identity as it relates to religion and faith and God and even that word, right? And I grew up Catholic in a Catholic school, and then I'm telling you, like, I was the girl who was reading the Bible of Satan in my Catholic school like toilets with my two best friends. And so we went that way, and then it's been like a coming home things. And I work with a lot of people, I think, who are like beginning to realize that they have religion or faith-based. I'm not going to use the word trauma because I don't know if everyone really identifies with that, even though you and I might look at it as trauma, but like tension, right? So Bisi, I'm so excited to speak to you. Tell us like a little bit about how you ended up becoming an expert on something so specific as faith-based trauma.
It's so funny, and I think this happens a lot in the counseling world, is that we experience something personally, aren't able to find the resources that we would like to be easily accessible, and then we go, okay, well, we're going to be that for the next people to go through that. And so that was my story too. Like, I experienced some pretty significant like pain and hurt in faith-related settings, when I was wanting to do my own work around it, my own therapy around it, it was so hard finding someone who actually like who could relate, but also could like clinically get to like the depression surrounding it, but also, you know, the confusion within my own faith identity. And so while I was doing my search for that, I was like, how many other people go looking for this too and then give up because they don't find anyone? And so for me, it's really important to be able to be that for someone.
Yeah, yeah. What to you has been an identifier for, like, how would somebody identify that maybe they're having pain around their experience with faith or their identity with faith? Like, what would help someone be able to say, oh, yeah, that could be me?
So I really like to encourage my clients to like think about how it feels in their body too. So like not just about their head, but like, are you feeling like tightness in your chest, or is your stomach upset about something? Are you feeling shaky or jittery about something? Are your thoughts racing? You know, when a certain topic or theme keeps coming up. And how do you feel when you remove yourself from that space? Is there like a peace afterwards? Because I really encourage people to start trusting their instincts. Like if you are feeling off, honor it and explore it. Don't get stuck in it, but do take the time to give it, you know, a voice.
Yeah, yeah. Somatic therapist here, big fan of the body back. Um, and so once we're there and we start noticing that something is off, what are some of like the more common experiences that you see that are like well, actually, yeah, what is faith-based trauma? Let's do like really simple. What is it? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So I typically, when I say faith-based trauma, I say faith-related because it could look like, you know, directly from like a pastor being inappropriate with someone physically to, you know, just being ostracized for beliefs in a faith-related setting to like maybe it's just in the home, you know, parents acting one way outside of the home and then acting completely different in the home, yet calling themselves people of a certain faith. And so it doesn't just have to be in a church setting completely, but if someone's using faith as a way to harm someone else, or if someone has been harmed by someone twisting faith, I would categorize that as trauma in a faith related setting.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. My first thought goes to certain beliefs that I've seen within like a Christian or Catholic church. I mean, I love, I'm not going to say I love the church, but I love faith and I love feeling supported spiritually. And I can immediately think of numerous times where I've like been in a church setting, been at mass, or been in a funeral or something like that. And they're preaching or teaching certain things that like just didn't sit right in my body and just felt very shame-based and difficult. And would that also be something that like to you, you're like, yeah, that's faith related?
Yeah, and especially that aspect of shame because of what it does to, you know, your self-worth, your identity, the way you view others around you, that sticks with you even when you leave, you know, that building. And so it's something you would carry with you long term and it's powerful.
Yeah, 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 it is. So how do you really identify that that's it? You know, if you are sitting and you're like, I don't know, I feel like I have like some low self-worth or some anxiety, or like I've just been feeling really depressed lately. I can't really figure it out. How does somebody actually identify that this is or could have been affecting them?
For in my case at least, we really dive into history. And so I ask, you know, what kind of things are important to you? Where do you spend a lot of your time? What interests you? What is your, you know, your community like in the sense of like, is it friends or is it family? What connects you together? And then I look for patterns. That's really something I find really helpful. Is there a theme? Like, did you guys like meet in a certain place, spend a lot of your time together? And then typically, if it is in a church setting, that'll reveal itself pretty quickly. At least in the States, like, youth groups were a really big thing. And so a lot of the times people's friend groups who grew up in, Christian church settings were from youth group, and they all heard the same thing growing up, and they were there 2-3 times a week. And so by kind of picking up on patterns, that really makes it a little easier to identify the source.
Yeah. Yeah. And also it's like, it's okay if we don't know the source. We can figure it out even if we don't know the source, because like you said before, we can just work with the pattern that's in the body. And our logical mind can like sit down, take a step back. And because I think that's a lot of, and it's kind of counterintuitive as well, because, you're going to be listening to this on a podcast, but a problem with a lot of the books and the podcasts and Instagram, and we're consuming and we're talking about all of these things, and we're trying to like figure out what our next step is. And all of that takes us away from what's actually happening inside of the body, which is what needs to be processed. We don't always need, and I see the how sometimes it can be counterintuitive to be making a podcast about this, but it's also a reminder, like, you don't actually need to know what the event was. You don't need to know what the thing was. If there's a piece of you that like clicks on this podcast and is like, oh, hey, I think there's something here for me.
Right.
That can be enough. We don't need to give it like more names or justify it. You don't need to make it fit into a box. We can just say, okay, maybe there is something here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what has been possible for you having kind of like come, like, what was it like? What was your day-to-day life like? What were your thoughts and your emotions like when you were still very much in maybe some of the wounding or the patterns from the faith-related trauma? And what is it like now?
Yeah. It was interesting because it felt like everything I thought I knew had come crumbling down because things weren't matching up. And so it was like, if these are the people who are supposed to be, leading me, guiding me, teaching me, and they are so intentionally causing harm, what else have I gotten wrong? And so that was just like, oh wow, like I really had to take a step back and figure out what life and faith looked like for myself moving forward.
Yeah. Everything I knew had like fallen apart. That's a really powerful statement. It's almost like when we base our entire life on certain beliefs and certain practices in a certain community, to suddenly realize that the ground that you held steady is no longer so steady. It's a very scary thing to realize, especially when we're talking about God. We're talking about like the fabric of the universe. What happens when you die? Like, big things, right? So how did you initially deal with that almost like groundlessness?
For me, I really had to take a step back, and I was able to leave the setting that my trauma had occurred in. And so I really had to figure out if anything, did I still want to keep from what I had experienced? And for me, it was music. And so for me, I was like, okay, if I'm going to keep anything, I'm at least going to keep listening to some of my favorite worship songs and some stuff like that. And so, and even if I didn't want anything, I knew that I at least needed to have something safe. So maybe it didn't need to be faith related, but I was like, okay, maybe I need to like spend time journaling. I picked something that I knew was helpful for me, regardless of where I was within my faith. And I was like, okay, this is safe for me right now. And I took baby steps, and I was not afraid to start over with what I thought I knew.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. I like to think about obviously I think about everything through like a nervous system lens, and what you say, so what you just said before about feeling like something didn't add up, like that when our body perceives that like something doesn't add up here, that is traumatic, because lack of congruence equals lack of safety. If something doesn't add up, if they're being one way here and one way there, or they're saying this and they're doing that, or like just something feels off or tense, that is a sign to our bodies that they are unsafe, and our body over a prolonged period of time is going to go into a state of trauma if they're consistently exposed to that. And then what you're saying about taking baby steps, like I cannot stress that enough. Your body needs you to take baby steps. Your body takes time to adapt. Your body does not want to be thrown into the deep end. Go slow, titrate, be patient. There is time. Notice where there is urgency. That could be a trauma response. It's going to be okay. Yeah. What was it like with, I'm thinking about community. So I'm kind of like putting myself in the situation of others, and church faith is so ingrained into the communities that we usually find ourselves in our families, in, like you said, youth groups. So how do you recommend, or how did you manage certain themes of community or lack of belonging that would come up?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest hurdles of navigating faith-related trauma, because typically the person who's been hurt is the one who gets ostracized, which isn't fair, but it's how it ends up going. So a lot of times the person who needed the most support is the one who receives the least amount of support. And so, and I often kind of just gently warn my clients, like, this may be a lonely time for a little bit. Yeah. You may have to reevaluate some of your relationships and decide what is an important character, someone you would like to be in community with. And, just preparing them that if you do need to make some changes, although it will be painful, ultimately it'll be for the best.
Yeah, you're picking up on something really important, which is like loneliness. Loneliness and not having a faith to connect with is a big thing. It's hard. Yeah. What are your tips for managing loneliness? Apart from like not connecting with people who make you not feel good, like what do you do with that sense of loneliness?
Well, I would encourage people to start getting comfortable with who you are. So, taking time to try new activities, try new hobbies, reconnect with things that used to fuel you. And as you are starting to learn what it is you do and don't enjoy, then starting to step back into community with other people, whether it's like an online Facebook group at first, or volunteering somewhere where you're around people, but you're not expected to make deep emotional connections yet. And, again, going back to that baby step of just being back into some form of community, because there's going to be some hesitation. Typically faith-related trauma includes people you trusted, and so that easing back in, because trauma is stress, so you don't want to completely stress your body out all over again, but you do want to give it a chance to get re-exposed to community.
Yeah. And a whole thing that I'm like, I love that you're like volunteer, or like put yourself in a situation where there are people, but you're not expected to have these big, deep relationships. Like that is really good advice, because you still get the happiness of being with people, but you're strengthening your right sense of identity and your sense of confidence. And from that confident, like resilient, grounded place, you can then decide how you re-engage in other relationships. Yeah, totally. And that way you can also maybe avoid certain conversations that might be really triggering and difficult, like, the nature of the universe. Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really good. So what does it look like now for you? If that's kind of like where we were, what happens when you begin to heal faith-related trauma? What is your day-to-day look like? What do you get access to that you wouldn't have had access to before?
Well, for me, I did end up sticking with my faith, but and for others, that's not how their story ends up going. But for me, I feel like I've got such a deeper understanding of my faith because I did the work myself instead of blindly trusting people. And so I feel connected at such a much more intimate level, if that makes sense. Like I can have faith in what I'm saying to be true because I've experienced it at this point. I know it can be easy to get into the habit where, some people are like, oh, I'm so sorry you went through that. But at least now you're like on the other side. But now, because I've gone through that, I can truly empathize. And I can say, I'm so sorry you went through that. That must have felt really lonely or isolated. Like I can truly understand more what it was like. And, on the other side, I am more easily able to pick up on people trying to continue to do harm. And I can at least speak to what it should truly look like and at least be a light for someone who may still be in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with what you're saying. I think that there is a really beautiful a light at the end of the tunnel in that, these are big things and big questions. And I think a lot of the pain comes from blindly following what some other human has said. And so when you're able to have the strength to say, I'm actually not going to do that, I'm going to step away. And then I'm going to contemplate and ponder and meditate on. And I really mean like contemplate, ponder, and meditate on, and feel safe not knowing the answer and be like, okay, what is this energy for me? Like, what is the energy of Mother Mary? What is the energy of this song, of this hymn, of this poem, of this verse? What is the energy of this thing? And like really feel that. People ask me, like I do a lot of work sometimes with religion, but like human design and like the different parts of the universe, right? So we all like talk about like, well, what does compassion mean? And I'm like, yeah, but like, what does compassion mean to you? Because, like, for example, Jesus, we can think about Jesus. And we have like, I feel like all of my like Catholic and Christians are like, yeah, I remember learning about Jesus. But there's a difference between like the Jesus that you learn about in school and like actually feeling into Jesus. Like, what was his message? What was he embodying here? What is the essence of that individual and what is the message that they have for me? And being able to contemplate on that and themes of like death and rebirth and spring and why would we fast or why would we take in these traditions? What do I get out of it? What does that bring into my body? That is a really grounded, confident, beautiful place to come from.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And like having that knowing, I think, tell me what you think, Missy. Like I think that's priceless.
Absolutely. And I think the how genuine it is, it's really what makes that connection so deep is because you really get to sit like, okay, like he came to be human, he experienced stuff that I've experienced, context may have been different, but that experience is so true for each of us. That's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it gives me goosebumps even to think about it, even to think about it. I have one last question that I want to ask you. It's very specific, but I have been asked it many times. And it's something that I think a lot of my clients come to me, and there's kind of this underlying fear of like something bad is going to happen to me. I'm scared of God's wrath. I'm scared of going to hell. I'm scared that I'm actually a bad person, that I'm sinning, that like something bad would happen because I don't deserve or I can't have this success. And a lot of the time, Not always, but a lot of the time it comes back to something that we believe about our version of God, no matter where the individual grew up or how they grew up. But this belief, and it comes back to faith. What are your thoughts on that, Fear?
Yeah, I agree with when you said it comes down to like what they've been taught God to look like, you know? And it's so heartbreaking to me because at least in the cultural context of when, you know, the Bible was written, you know, that Jewish culture of like love and community, you know, and just like the way that they interacted together, like that being such a core aspect of, you know, the biblical experience, I feel like it got lost in translation somewhere. And so, and I don't know if it's like the lens of this day and age, but at its core, there's so much like peace, you know, unity, love, joy, like all those fruits of the spirit. And so I would really encourage people to just sit in the context of what was happening in those times, you know, do a little bit of like cultural exploration too, you know, what did Israel look like? You know, what are like even just like down to the nature, like what were some of the plants, you know, some of the trees to really just ground themselves in what it could have been like physically in that setting. And then, you know, start building up, okay, what else could I be missing about the character of like God or Jesus? Like if this was their setting, what must he have like enjoyed doing as a child? How did he relax, you know? How did he spend time with friends? You know, really connecting to those aspects kind of takes and it puts a new light on the well-roundedness of who God and Jesus are.
Before we wrap this episode up, I'm going to take a few minutes to share with you an invitation that will support you in taking this work deeper. There could be various reasons why you're here listening today. Perhaps you are a client, a friend, or a colleague. Maybe we just found each other, or maybe we've known each other for a while. What I know to be true is that you're likely here because you're ready to develop the tools to bounce back from the difficulties of life quickly and with more ease by having the tools to regulate your nervous system and find inner peace instead of inner conflict for good. You know that you are ready to say goodbye to the nagging inner critic voice telling you how you should be or getting stuck in the endless what ifs of anxiety. You're ready to know how to set boundaries with your loved ones in a way that increases the love, trust, and connection and doesn't just feel like isolating walls. And you are ready to finally increase your resilience and your body's ability to feel more in control of your big emotions without trying to manipulate them so that you can find your innate wisdom. You're ready to finally celebrate the growth of your relationship or your business without experiencing shame and guilt, even though you're experiencing quicker success than those around you. I support all of my clients in this through a framework of nervous system regulation, emotional alchemy, and self-trust cultivation. And this podcast is just the tip of the iceberg. This is why I'm extending an invitation for you to book a free expansion call, where on this call, we will dive even deeper into exactly what you need to go from feeling overwhelmed, managing big emotions, and falling into anxiety or depression as a result, to having the tools to regulate them quickly and with ease. In this free 30-minute call, you will receive free coaching and support around your unique personal situation. And we will explore whether or not coaching is going to be the best fit for you at this time. Some of the results that clients have achieved after just their expansion call are deep acceptance of their differences, so much that when they share their story now, they attribute most of their self-acceptance to this one 30-minute call, or signing a client right after the call because they leaned into the embodiment work, or feeling deeply seen and understood so much that now when they go to ask their partner for a hug, they no longer feel needy when they're doing it and they get the hug. Or switching one habit that they had when communicating with their partner for another and witnessing more harmony and peace in the relationship instead of resentment and nitpicking. And you deserve this too. So you will find the link in the podcast notes to lock your free call in ASAP. when you book this call, you can expect to walk away with clear, tangible ideas on how to apply this work to your life, and you'll decide if you would like to work with me one-on-one in the process of becoming more resilient and regulated. Yeah.
That one face we make stop.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had literally never ever thought to look at it like that. But it makes sense. And even like putting yourself in the context of like what was happening back then and understanding the amount of communication that people would have had and like the time looking at the stars. And there's this really wonderful question that somebody asked me once, and it was, when you look at your beliefs, who benefits from them? And I think that helped me understand that there is a difference, and it's important to differentiate between the divine and the messages of the divine and the people and the institutions that started spreading it. Because just because an institution or a person took a message, and I want to use the word appropriate, I don't know if it's the right word, but kind of like use that message for an end, doesn't mean that the original message is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What a beautiful place to end. I think that's really good. I feel like that's very tangible. And I hope that if you guys have any questions or any thoughts that like we didn't touch on, please message us, ask a question, message us on Instagram. You'll find all of the information below in the show notes. Bissy, is there anything that you want to share or comment on or anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate both you and your clients for even, asking these questions and starting this conversation, because it's so often just swept under the rug, or it's like hushed, or like we don't talk about that. But even Jesus himself would have the hard conversations. And so I love it when people bring these kinds of questions and they're really willing to just start a conversation, because it's an important conversation, but it's not had often enough.
Yeah, go you guys. You guys are doing so well. We love you. Yeah, that's so good. Can you share your social media, your email, like anything that any gifts or anything that you want our beautiful listeners to know about you so they can keep chatting with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am most active on Instagram. My Instagram is Blooming with Gbadamosi, and I have a website that's under that same name, bloomingwithgbadamosi.com. I loved engaging, so feel free to comment, send me DMs. My email is bloomingwithgbadamosi@gmail.com. I'm all about, the earthiness of like growing up into a plant and, the beauty of that. And so you'll find blooming everywhere. But I would love to just keep the conversation going. I also specialize in racial trauma. And so like hard conversations is what I'm all about. So I'm completely open to some new friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I really love that you shared about recently on Instagram was compassion fatigue. So everyone go and like find that. I'll try and see if I can link it below, especially if you're a fellow coach or an entrepreneur or a therapist. Go and read a post on compassion fatigue. Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Bissy.
Thank you.
A big and special thanks to Upturned for composing this magical piece of music, and to GS Studios for mixing it. To find Upturned's other tracks or ask for your own special custom piece of music, go say hello using their contact details in the show notes.